For this problem, I am going to give you a second to pause the video and rewrite the problem in terms of sine and cosine. When you restart, you'll see my work written out and see if my work matches your work. Now, I have a hint for you. Try to avoid the superfraction. Did you avoid the superfraction by pulling cosecant out to the front? I hope you did. So what I did is I pulled cosecant of theta to the front, and then I rewrote the denominator again, or rewrote the second fraction again as 1 over 1 plus cotangent squared of theta. Then we remember our identities. Cosecant of theta is just 1 over sine of theta. And then cotangent of theta is cosine squared of theta over sine squared of theta. So I rewrote the fraction again, but just substituted the identities in. All right, so I want you to pause the video now. What I want to do is simplify this fraction even more. It is a mess. So let's start with just making the denominator one big fraction. And I want you to recall the rules of Khan Academy. See if you can get a common denominator and combine those together. Go ahead and pause the video. Recall when you have to combine rational expressions, you need to have a common denominator. Our common denominator in this case is the sine squared of theta. So we had to multiply 1 by sine squared of theta over sine squared of theta, keeping the top and bottom the same in balance. When you did that, you got in the denominator this big, huge fraction. In the denominator, our denominator was sine squared of theta, and our numerator would have been the sine squared of theta plus the cosine squared of theta. Remember that we still have that other numerator of 1. So we still have our superfraction going on here. Now we're going to divide. We're going to do keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. What we're going to do is we're going to keep the numerator the same. We're going to change this division to multiplication, and then we would be flipping the fraction down here. So the sine squared theta in the denominator would move to the top, and this would move to the bottom. Now think about that. If we're multiplying this fraction then times 1, then all we would be left with would be this fraction flip. So we would have the sine squared of theta in the numerator. And in the denominator, we would have sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta. Let's not forget all of this is still being multiplied by the 1 over sine of theta. Now, what can we do now to simplify this further? Remember, this is multiplication. And if I look across, I notice that I can cross divide here. One of my signs will actually cancel out, making the numerator no longer sine squared of theta, but sine of theta. So we end up with sine of theta over sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta. Now, looking at this, it seems as if we are done. But I want you guys to take a second and look at the denominator. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta. Is that something that we know? Yes, it is our Pythagorean identity. Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. So let's just substitute that 1 in for the denominator, and we would have a sine of theta over 1. Which means that all of this was just a fancy way to write sine of theta.